Welcome to All Pro Football Data. My name is Jim Coburn, and I know you've been waiting for this video to finally happen, but we're here, everybody. This is the top 10 wide receivers in the 2024 NFL Draft Class based on data. And we're going to talk about what that data is. Stay tuned to the end where we reveal who the top wide receiver is in this class, but we're going to go into a deep dive on every single wide receiver in this class that has the best data overall. Now, how am I grading these prospects? Because I know a lot of people want to throw out data with hyphens, like, okay, your data, your data. But this is what we're going to look at here. We're going to look at their offensive market share scores, which essentially is the percentage of the offense they made up. It's as simple as that. We're going to look at their efficiency scores. How efficient were they per a snap basis? So yards per reception, TD percentage. These are things that efficiency scores deal with. We're going to look at their athleticism traits to kind of see how they tested as an athlete. And then we're finally going to look at their adjusted production scores. And then we're going to give an overall data score based on how they tested overall in terms of the numbers that matter at the position. And the way we're going to determine the numbers that matter at the position is based on past performances. So every player that tested 90 percentile in one particular metric, what was the average approximate value for those players? That is then going to be used as a grading system. So if a wide receiver tested in the 90 percentile of, say, solo tackle market share, and the average AV or approximate value of a player like that is, say, 5, then that number is added together with all the other testing numbers and then averaged to give a mean, which is what their data grade is. So hopefully that makes sense. I'm taking all the data. I'm then boiling it down into an average for what the average score was in terms of the actual NFL performance, and then comparing it to every single wide receiver since the 1969 NFL draft class. So let's go, starting with number 10, Xavier Legette from South Carolina. Pros, he has elite size, elite athleticism traits. Cons, he's older, inconsistent production profile. If you want to know more about him, I did a video in the past, which you can check out here. But his overall data grade, I would give it 87.19 out of 100, which again is just a collective of all of his data combined. So despite the concerns with his age, despite the concerns with his inconsistent production profile, he still has a very strong profile in this draft class. It's just there's a lot of concerns there in terms of those concerns. So he does have a great data grade, and that's why he's so frustrating as a prospect because of that. But I think he still deserves to be in the top 10 because of his athleticism traits and because of the production that he put up. Looking at some of that production, you look at his market share production score right here. You look at his efficiency score right here. Of course, you take a look at his athleticism traits, and you take a look at his adjusted production traits, which is by far the biggest thing that's pushing his profile down is his adjusted production traits, because he's closer to a starter than an All-Pro or Pro Bowl player based on his overall production data. Getting to number 9, we get to Troy Franklin from Oregon. Pros, near elite production traits, great age score. Cons, below average size and athleticism for his size. His overall data grade was 88.17 out of 100. Franklin was a wide receiver that was a top 5 wide receiver going into the combine, and then after the combine, he sunk down to number 9 because of his size and because of athleticism for his size. There are many scouts that have concerns with Franklin because of his route running, because of inconsistencies here and there in terms of his body movement. I know when he went through the gauntlet drill at the combine, there was a lot of scouts that were a little wary of him after going through those drills. But when you look at him as a data prospect, he's still strong. He still has strong production. He still has a strong overall profile. Didn't test well as an athlete, but wide receivers don't necessarily need to be elite athletes to be successful. They just have to be above average. And no, he does not have any above average traits as an athlete. he still has a strong enough production profile and age profile to be considered number 9 on this list. Looking at some of his production traits, this is his market share production right here. Tested well. His efficiency traits, probably one of the more efficient wide receivers in this draft class based on his yards per reception and touchdowns per touch. Then you look at his athleticism traits. You can see the average All-Pro, Pro Bowl average, and starter average are pretty much the same at the position. And then you look at Troy Franklin, who is below average in every single metric. So that's the concern that you have with a guy like Troy Franklin because of his size. Then, of course, you have his adjusted production traits, which are the biggest reason why he's at number 9, is despite his athleticism issues, he still has a very strong adjusted production score, which is one of the more correlative scores at the position. So if you were just to not look at anything else but their production for their level of competition, the team that they were on, and their age, you're going to find more special players just looking at that than anything else, except for maybe draft status. Now, number 8, Devonta Walker from North Carolina. Pros: above average production, near elite athleticism traits. Cons: average age and production with mostly against lesser competition. Data grade, I give him an 89.10 out of 100. And again, that is based on thousands of wide receivers at the position. So he is a very impressive prospect from that kind of way. Looking at his production data, good production, as you can see here, based on his market share data. Looking at his efficiency scores, also had good efficiency. Yards per reception was more in the 60 percentile area, but still decent efficiency overall. Looking at his athleticism traits, he was 80 percentile in terms of explosiveness, speed for his size. Those are great traits to have. And then when you get to his adjusted production traits, he's closer to a starter than an All-Pro or Pro Bowl player, but he's still a good, solid overall profile. So again, he has the athleticism traits you're looking for. He has the adjusted production traits you're looking for, and that is why he is number 8 on this list. Moving on to number 7, Keon Coleman from Florida State. Probably the most hated on wide receiver in this draft class. But he does have some good traits, guys. His pros: he has near elite explosiveness and above average production traits overall with a decent age score. Cons: below average speed and did not have elite production traits. You can also get into the whole route running stuff. The reception perception stuff was also very concerning in terms of his overall tape. But a lot of what Coleman is what he potentially could be at the next level with training and development, more so than what he is right now. And I know a lot of people hate that. They're like, why are you drafting the guy who you have to develop? But there are many players that are like that in the NFL. Many players that were not really that great initially, and then they developed into something special down the line. So you're kind of trying to judge, okay, what could this player become long term? Data a lot of times gives you those insights, kind of gives you a roadmap, if you will, to see if they could make that development leap or not. And in Coleman's case, he has the traits on paper to make that leap decently in terms of his overall data. Now, his overall data grade was 89.68 out of 100. Taking a look at his market share production, decent again, not elite, closer to a starter average in terms of that. Looking at his efficiency scores, wasn't that efficient of a wide receiver. Wasn't really near the averages of the starters, Pro Bowl or All-Pro players. But again, you're trying to hope for development there. When you get to his athleticism scores, near elite explosiveness with below average speed for his size. This is not the best trait that you would ever really want to see, but there have been wide receivers that have worked with this type of athleticism profile. Moving on to his adjusted production score, this is by far the biggest thing that kind of helps push his profile up in the data grades, is because when you look at him in terms of the All-Pro averages, the All-Pro threshold, and Pro Bowl averages, he's within that range. So his age is kind of the biggest driver of his data profile. There are some concerns, of course, but again, when you're taking a guy like Coleman, you're betting on that ability to develop at the next level more so than anything else with him. And based on that, from a data perspective, from a draft perspective, he kind of has to be here when you look at his overall data collectively. Moving on to number 6, we have Adonai Mitchell from Texas. Elite athleticism traits and elite age, below average market share production. His data grade is 94.28 out of 100, and he's one of those wide receivers that I kind of pull my hair out on as a data evaluator because he has a lot of things based on his data that I do not like at all. I have an uneasy feeling about wide receivers that have below average market share data. But at the same time, he does have great efficiency, and he does have good athleticism traits with good age. So looking at him in terms of his market share data, as you can see, below average in terms of his receiving market share, below average in terms of total offensive market share, does have above average TD market share. So you do have that to hang your hat on with him. When you look at his efficiency scores, really good efficiency, 70 percentile in terms of yards per reception, and high 80 percentile in terms of his TD percentage. So these are good traits for him in terms of efficiency. Look at his athleticism traits. 90 percentile explosiveness, 90 percentile speed, did not do flexibility testing, but even if he did terrible in terms of his flexibility, he still would have pretty good marks and still rate high based on those factors. Then when you look at his adjusted production score, his age, his MSA rating, his pass rating, all those numbers are fantastic for him in this particular area. So you kind of have to look at all this collectively and go, yes, this is what you want out of a prospect like this. And I am very excited about him going forward. Then, of course, you look at Rome Odunsi from Washington. He's number 5 on this list. He has near elite athleticism with good production traits. Did not have an elite receiving market share score, which is why he's number 5 on this list, but he still has a very strong profile. His overall data grade was 95.81 out of 100. Now, looking at him, in terms of market share data, he did very well, but his receiving market share, as you can see, was in the 75 percentile. You want that to be more in the 80 to 90 percentile for that particular area. I know the game is changing in terms of wide receivers. You know, the schemes are changing. There's a much lower market share now in terms of averages over the last 5 seasons. A lot of that's because of the increase of spread offenses. But despite that fact, he definitely could do a little bit better in terms of that data point. Moving on to wide receiver efficiency scores. For Odunsi, he had 80 percentile in terms of his TD percentage, 80 percentile in terms of yards per reception. So he was a very efficient wide receiver based on his overall data traits. Then when you get to athleticism traits, he was fantastic in this area with high 80 percentile explosiveness, 80 percentile in terms of speed, and then 90 percentile in terms of flexibility for his size. He's an elite athlete at the position, which is why a lot of people have him as the 3rd best wide receiver. We're going to get into that a little bit in terms of the guys above him, but he does have that to hang his hat on, that he is a great athlete with a full profile. You know, he did everything at the combine. He did the 40, he did the vertical, the broad jump, the short shuttle, the 3-cone, tried to improve his 3-cone. So you love that as a data analyst to see a wide receiver that's trying to put everything on paper. And again, he has nothing to hide from that perspective, so I really like that about him. But that's kind of his athleticism profile. And then when you get to his adjusted production traits, he's above the All-Pro average, the Pro Bowl average at the position, and you know, he has that potential. He really does. So if you have Rome Odunsi as your top wide receiver, I'm not going to disagree with you, because based on his overall data, he could easily hit those high income, or I should say high overall outcomes at the next level for him. Now, when you get to the number 4 guy on this list, is Brian Thomas Jr. from LSU. Pros: elite athleticism, size, and age. Cons: only slightly above average market share production. His overall data grade is 96.77 out of 100, which is why he's number 4 in this list. Looking at his production traits, this is the area where there is some concern. Is he only had 60 percentile, you know, basically a slightly above average total offensive market share production and receiving market share, with a high 78 percentile touchdown market share. He's very similar to Adonai Mitchell in terms of his market share data, but he's a little better. When you look at his efficiency scores, he also had better efficiency in some ways compared to Mitchell, which is also another reason why he's number 4 in this list. And then athleticism traits, high 80 percentile in terms of explosiveness with a 90 plus percentile speed score. Just fantastic overall, athleticism for him. And then when you get to his pass score, fantastic here for him in terms of his age, MSA rating, pass rating. All those numbers are fantastic for him. And this is why he's number 4 on this list, is that he's not exactly there yet. Again, like Adonai Mitchell, you're kind of projecting him in many ways. But he has enough great overall traits right now that what he could become at the NFL level could be one of the best wide receivers from this draft class. Like Brian Thomas Jr. has the upside potential to be the best wide receiver from this draft class based on his age, based on his physical traits, based on all those different kinds of things. Is he that right now? No. But what he could be long term is that guy. And that's why he has to be number 4 on this list. Then we get to number 3, Xavier Worthy from Texas. Pros. Elite speed. Everybody saw that speed. He ran the fastest 40 ever at the position. At least that we've been able to record electronically. Then, of course, he has near elite production traits. Below average explosiveness and size are his biggest cons, but his overall data grade was 96.99 overall, which is a pretty fantastic score. Now, in terms of his data, his production data, pretty decent all around. Again, hits above the starter averages, Pro Bowl averages, and All Pro averages for the most part. Maybe not the All Pro averages, but does hit at least the Pro Bowl and starter averages. Then, of course, when you get to his efficiency traits, fantastic efficiency, and was a touchdown machine as well in terms of his TD percentage or touchdowns per touch. Then when you get to his athleticism traits, he does have below average explosiveness, but he does have 80 percentile speed for his size. And then, of course, when you look at his adjusted production traits, fantastic in terms of his age, MSA rating, and pass rating. I know a lot of people have been comparing him to John Ross. John Ross was an older prospect. John Ross had a history of injuries before he even came into the NFL. I mean, John Ross injured himself during the 40 when he broke the record, or at least came close to breaking the record. I think he broke the record up to that point, but neither here nor there. John Ross had a history of all these issues with him, and his production had issues. His efficiency wasn't that great for John Ross. So I don't want to hear people comparing Xavier Worthy to John Ross because it's not a fair comparison. Are they smaller wide receivers that run really, really fast? Absolutely. But I think there's more to Worthy than meets the eye. And in many ways, he could have the impact that Deshaun Jackson had. I know that's high praise to make, of course, but Xavier Worthy's overall production profile with his age and everything else like that is better than Deshaun Jackson's profile coming out of California. And for those reasons, that's why he has to be number 3 on this list. Despite a lot of naysayers, despite a lot of haters, he has to be number 3 on this list because of his overall production profile. Then we get to number 2 on this list. I know I'm going to get some hate for this, I really am, but maybe if I do 1A and 1B, I know some people have done that. They've done 1A and 1B, or 1B and 1A, but it's Marvin Harrison Jr. And I'm going to get to kind of the biggest difference between these two, but you can't go wrong with either one. And I know a lot of you guys might already know who number 1 is, but this is why Marvin Harrison Jr. is number 2 in this class. He could be the number 1 wide receiver in a multitude of classes. So let's just get into it. Pros, elite production and elite athleticism traits. Now, he didn't go through the combine testing and stuff like that. So a lot of the data that I've used is data that was published in The Athletic. So I kind of just have to grasp its straws a little bit. I kind of have to go, okay, they reported he ran this 40. They reported he did this short shuttle. They reported he did this, vertical broad jump, etc. So I kind of went with those numbers for his profile. So again, if you want to throw those numbers out, I totally understand you. But his production profile is decent enough that despite the fact that he may be an average athlete, I mean, we don't know. But based on the numbers that were reported, he's an elite level athlete. So you kind of have to just kind of make do with that. But the bottom line is this: elite production traits, elite athleticism traits, at least that was reported by The Athletic. Cons, doesn't really have any cons. Overall data grade, 99.78 out of 100. That is just ridiculous. You're talking about one of the best data profiles that has come out since the 1969 NFL draft class. That's just bonkers, guys. Now, in terms of market share data, great across the board, with the exception of receiving market share. He didn't have 90+ percentile receiving market share, but he did dominate in terms of touchdown market share and total offensive market share. Those numbers really help his profile a lot. Then, of course, you get to efficiency scores. Efficiency-wise, TD percentage or touchdowns per touch, high-end level. Yards per reception, high-end level. All those numbers are pretty much elite to near elite in terms of his efficiency data. Then, of course, you get to his athleticism traits. Again, this is based on his projected athleticism traits, but these are some pretty solid numbers to have. 89 percentile in terms of explosiveness, 90 percentile speed, 90+ percentile flexibility. If you're going to take a wide receiver in the top 5 of the draft or higher, you better test like this as an athlete, especially if you're considering them to be like a generational prospect. You have to test like this. So I'm just going to go give him the benefit of the doubt and say that he would test like this. But again, it is more so projection. Now, adjusted production score. Despite the concerns with the athleticism, because we don't have a full profile for him, this is his adjusted production traits. He was 99 percentile in terms of his pass score, 96 percentile in terms of MSA, and 91 percentile in terms of his age. That's ridiculous. It's just ridiculous. There have never been that many wide receivers to kind of hit all those areas. So again, despite the fact, let's just say he was an average athlete. Let's say he ran 4.6 in terms of his 40, and didn't do that well in terms of a bunch of different things. Come on, guys. The adjusted production is just flawless for him, and that's the most correlative overall data point in the draft is adjusted production. Not even, athleticism is great, but adjusted production is where it's at in terms of finding players, and he was fantastic in terms of those numbers. Now we get into number 1. Again, not really surprising to anybody, at least, or maybe a little surprising. But the number 1 wide receiver in this draft class, based on data, is Malik Neighbors. Now, you could have him 1A and 1B. You really could, because the difference between Malik Neighbors and Marvin Harrison Jr. is the difference between 99.78 and 99.96. That is not that big of a difference in terms of that overall, in terms of that data point. But at the same time, he still is number 1. If you just base it on just the pure number of who tested the best based on data, it's Malik Neighbors. Now, why did he test this well? Well, let's go to market share data. 90 percentile in terms of his receiving market share, 90 percentile in terms of his total offensive market share, 76 percentile in terms of touchdown market share. So he has a weakness that's kind of the opposite of Marvin Harrison Jr. Marvin Harrison Jr. was better in terms of touchdowns. Malik Neighbors is better in terms of receiving market share. So that's kind of the difference between these two, based on how they played at college, based on their usage, based on the percentage of the offense that they made up, is simply that one guy was getting touchdowns a lot more and the other guy was getting, receptions and yardage a lot more. Now, when you get to the efficiency scores, fantastic efficiency in terms of yards per reception. TD percentage was more so 80 percentile. But again, that's where the difference is between these two prospects. One prospect is better at getting touchdowns. The other prospect was better in terms of getting yardage. Then you get to athleticism traits. So, of course, this was at LSU, so you kind of have to take it with a grain of salt, but, in terms of a pro day. But he did test well in terms of his explosion testing, 90 percentile, 90+ percentile in terms of explosiveness, and 90+ percentile in terms of speed for his size. Fantastic numbers for him in terms of that. And then when you get to his adjusted production traits, this is where Neighbors really has the advantage over Marvin Harrison Jr. based on a data perspective. Again, film, you can debate film all day, but based on data, based on if you grade these players based on data, Neighbors had a 99 percentile age score, a 98 percentile MSA score, and a 99 percentile pass score. Those are just ridiculous. ridiculous numbers to have as a wide receiver prospect. So, based on all that, that's why he's number one. So, all that stuff out of the way, check out these videos right here if you want to watch some more. Also, check out my Patreon page at patreon.com/jcoburn. Check out my Twitter account, or formerly known as, my ex, formerly known as Twitter account, at Geometrics. And also like, comment, and subscribe if you like this video. And let me know in the comment section below, who are your top 10 wide receivers? How would you rank them? I really want to know. Again, this was all based on data. That wasn't based on film or anything like that. It's just based on how they tested as athletes, their age profile, their production profile, compared to past performances in the past. So I want to hear from you guys, how you feel about this class. But with all that stuff out of the way, thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next episode. Peace.